When it comes to website platforms, there are literally no shortage of options. You've got WordPress, you've got Showit, you've got Squarespace, you've got Wix, you've got Weebly, you've got Joomla, you've got Drupal, and 1,000 other platforms that I don't even know the names of. However, as a web designer, I have worked with my fair share of website platforms, and I know that the top 3 most popular ones that my clients usually go for are either WordPress, Showit, and Squarespace. So in this video, I want to talk about pros and cons of each of those platforms and help you decide which of those platforms is the right choice for your website. If you're new to this channel, my name is Anna Lea. I'm the owner of Lea Design Studio, where I help my clients design websites and create content that attracts their ideal audience and converts them into paying clients and customers. This is also what I talk about on this YouTube channel, so if that's something that you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up so that I know to create more videos like this. And now, with further ado, let's dive into today's topic. Okay, so first of all, I want to tackle WordPress because it is the most popular website platform out there. In fact, it powers more than 40% of all websites on the internet, and I'm pretty sure that number is climbing up to close to 50% if it hasn't already reached 50% or more by now. The reason WordPress is so popular is because it is a free platform, or it is open source, which means that it's free as in free beer. For those of you who are familiar with open source movement and open source programs, essentially you are free to download the program, modify it to fit your needs, and then you are even free to distribute it further under the same license as you downloaded it with. So essentially, with WordPress, you can that means that you have the freedom and complete control over your website. You can add features that you want to your website. You can remove those that you don't want. You can choose whichever hosting platform you want. You can take your website with you anywhere. So a lot of those who prefer to use WordPress for their platform say that that's one of the biggest pros, because you essentially are really in control of your website and are the true owner of your website. Now, when it comes to WordPress, it is important to remember that there are 2 versions of WordPress. One is WordPress.com, which is essentially a hosted version of WordPress, which means you don't have to worry about hosting. That is taken care of for you. It is provided by Automatic, which is the company behind WordPress as a platform. WordPress.org is the self-hosted version, which you can download to your computer, upload it to your hosting platform of choice, and that is the version that I will be covering in this topic because it is the one that is more commonly used than the hosted version of WordPress. Now, another reason why WordPress is so popular is the sheer amount of themes and plugins that you have available for it. So essentially, in order to get WordPress style, you're going to need a theme for it. That is what controls the visual aspect of your website. And there are free and paid themes for WordPress. And I don't know the exact number, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of themes available for WordPress, both free and paid. Most of the free themes you can find on the official theme repository. There are some theme developers that provide free themes on their websites. But most commonly, you will also find that they provide also a premium version of that same theme, which offers more features and more control over your website looks. So for example, on the free version of a theme, you might be able to choose just one main color, whereas in the premium version of the theme, you can choose 3 colors and 2 fonts. Obviously, this depends from one theme to the next. And there are plenty of third-party marketplaces like Theme Forest, Creative Market, and I think another one is Mojo Marketplace, if I'm not mistaken, where you can download third-party premium themes. And of course, there are also developers that sell their themes on their own website. Then you also have plugins, which are basically small snippets of code which add various features to your website. So WordPress on its own doesn't really come with a lot of features out of the box. I mean, you can create pages, you can style how your website looks, you can blog, you can, did I mention create pages? If I didn't, you can create pages. But other than that, you can add users to your website and you can control the level of access that they have for your website. But other than that, there really isn't much that you can do with WordPress out of the box as is. For that, you either need to have coding skills, which means you need to learn not only HTML and CSS and JavaScript, but you also need to know PHP, which is the underlying language that WordPress is written in. But you also, or if you don't want to learn code, you can hire a developer to add those features for you. And you can also install plugins which add features such as the ability to have a shop, the ability to have galleries, the ability to add social media follow buttons, the ability to optimize your blog posts for SEO, and stuff like that. So the ability to create a membership website, for example, or a Facebook clone even. So essentially, if you want more features to your website, you will need to install a plugin, hire a developer, or learn how to code yourself. Now, another thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to WordPress is that you are going to need hosting, as I've already mentioned. Now, hosting ranges from super cheap to more expensive. Obviously, super cheap is tempting because, well, it's super cheap, but that doesn't mean that super cheap is always the best option, because in most cases, this is going to be shared hosting, which means your website will share a part of the disk space, of the server space, with other websites on the platform. So what that means is that essentially, if one website is to get hacked or infected with a virus or something like that, chances of that happening to your website are pretty good. Another thing is, for example, if one website, for any reason at all whatsoever, suddenly gains a huge spike in traffic, because bandwidth is often not, I'm not going to say limited, because most of the hosts promise you unlimited bandwidth, but they preface that with, as long as it's within reasonable amounts. So essentially, if one website suddenly starts receiving huge amounts of traffic and it's basically using up a lot of server resources, the web host might decide to throttle that website, and that can result into your website going down, because one website simply overused the website resources that it had available on that particular server. So I wouldn't necessarily go for the cheapest hosting option available. I would look to go for some medium-ranged prices that start around $15 and up, because it is chances are that those hosts have, yes, they will have some limits on how much disk space you can use and how much bandwidth you get and whatnot, but then you can rest assured that you're not also getting a crowded server where basically any other website can take your website down because of what they're doing. Another thing to keep in mind when choosing a host is you want to make sure that they have good security practices in place, because WordPress, being popular as it is often a target of hackers. So it's not that WordPress is inherently insecure and you should steer clear of it. It's that it is so popular that it's getting targeted with viruses, similarly to how Windows has more viruses than Mac or a Linux computer, simply because it's more popular. So it's obvious that hackers are going to go for what's more popular, because they can infect a higher number of websites like that. Now, where hacking comes, it's usually caused by DDoS attacks, and it's also caused by outdated files in your WordPress installation. Things like outdated plugins, outdated themes, outdated WordPress itself. Those are where most commonly vulnerabilities are found, and that is what hackers usually exploit. So a host that has good security measures in place will usually scan your website daily for any malware attacks or malware files, also for DDoS attacks, and they will have preventative measures to ensure that the DDoS attack does not happen or severely reduce chances of it happening, which is why it's important to choose a host that has those proactive measures in place. Now, speaking of outdated files, if you decide to go the WordPress route, because WordPress is so versatile, thanks to all these plugins, it is very, very important that you keep your website up to date. That means updating WordPress, updating plugins, and updating your theme when those updates are released. Now, sometimes you might go weeks without needing to update anything. Other times you might be logging into your website every single day and notice that there is an update. I'm not going to tell you that you need to log in every hour and make sure everything is up to date, but if nothing else, log in at least once a week and take care of all those updates, so that you can have that peace of mind that your website is protected and up to date. Because as I said, if your website is up to date, less chances of hackers exploiting vulnerabilities. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that if you decide to go WordPress route, you will need to keep your website backed up, so to speak, because accidents do happen. Your hosting company might experience some troubles. They might go down, their servers might get attacked and hacked and whatnot. So something might happen to cause your website to suddenly go down. If that happens, then you want to have a backup which will allow you to get up and running as fast as possible without any major downtime experienced. So in other words, WordPress is very versatile in the sense that you can take the platform and you can create any type of website with it. And you can even create powerful apps and things like company intranet and other super powerful websites that are very customized and have very specific functionality. However, you will need to pay a developer to do that for you. If you're not experienced with code, don't expect to be able to do this yourself. And WordPress also requires a lot of maintenance. So it requires plugins to be kept up to date, themes to be kept up to date, WordPress itself needs to be kept up to date, and you need to back up your site regularly. So it isn't a hands-off approach. This is a platform that you will need to get your hands dirty, and you will need to take care of the maintenance of your website. So who is WordPress best for? In my opinion, WordPress is best for those who have the budget to hire a developer/designer when needed, or have a developer or a designer on their team. Can you DIY a website with WordPress? Yes, absolutely you can. However, don't expect to create the next Facebook clone or Twitter clone on your own. Yes, you can install the plugins. Yes, you can get the theme that will support that functionality. But in the end, you will need to go through some tweaking and making sure that everything works. And for that, you will most definitely probably need to delve into some code. And you will need to make sure that all your plugins and themes and whatnot are playing together nicely and not causing issues with one another or compatibility problems. And for that reason alone, I think that if you are looking to build a truly custom website with custom functionality and features, you are better off preparing to either have a budget or hire a developer, or already have one on your theme. Other than that, if you're looking for like the most basic website, you don't need a lot of features, you don't need a lot of custom functionality. Yes, you can DIY with WordPress. Yes, it'll be a good choice, but no worse or no better than the other platforms that I'm going to go through in this video, because essentially the right website platform is the one that meets your needs, that has the features that you need, and that fits within your own personal how shall I put this? A time and effort you're willing to put into your website. If you want to be absolutely hands-off and you don't have any budget at all whatsoever to hire somebody to help you out, then WordPress might not be the best choice for you. If you have the budget to hire somebody for you, to do this for you, then WordPress is a good choice. As far as some myths that WordPress is the only website if you want it to be SEO optimized and whatnot, that is absolutely not true, because other platforms that I'm going to mention here absolutely have the capabilities to correctly optimize your blog posts, pages, and anything else for SEO purposes. And finally, would I recommend WordPress for absolute beginners and those who are not very tech savvy? In my honest opinion, no, I wouldn't, because while you can learn that stuff, it will take away time from things that would be better, that would serve your business better, such as establishing relationships with other entrepreneurs in your industry, finding your ideal clients, nurturing your audience, growing your audience, and developing and refining your offers. So that is as far as WordPress goes. Now I want to talk about Squarespace, because Squarespace is the platform that I personally use for my websites, and the platform that I recommend for my clients, which are typically small business owners who provide services or are coaches and consultants, basically. So what makes Squarespace so special? So first of all, Squarespace is a hosted website, which means there is no need to go and find a separate hosting company. You cannot download Squarespace and install it onto any hosting that you want. It is hosted, it is provided by Squarespace. Squarespace offers templates that you need to pick a template before you even start a website. And the templates are free, and so there is no, like, you need to pay extra for a template. There are third-party designers that sell templates, me included, but it is not necessary if your budget is super limited. You can get away with just choosing one of the Squarespace templates, which are quite modern and nice looking, and you can DIY a website using one of those templates. Squarespace, when it comes to features and functionalities, Squarespace basically is kind of like an all-in-one platform. So essentially you can build your website with it, and other features that it included, you can create a blog with it right out the gate. You can sell products on Squarespace, both physical and digital. You can also sell memberships, and you can sell services through Squarespace. They have a built-in scheduling tool. However, you will need to pay extra for that. They come with built-in newsletter forms. However, if you want to use their email marketing campaigns feature, you will need to pay extra for that. Which, again, might seem like they're nickel and diming you for every single little thing, but when you think about it, you would need to pay for those features if you were to use a different platform. So essentially, it's not really like it's, oh my God, what the hell are they doing? I mean, it's not, this is an extra service that they provide on top of the platform. So it's kind of logical to expect for them to charge extra for it, because it's not an essential necessity to build a website. It is an essential part of your marketing strategy, but that is another story for another day. Anyway, so they have a lot of features that basically allow you to manage your business from one location. You can also buy domains through Squarespace, even though I don't recommend that. So if you want the ease of use and if you want to keep everything under one roof, then Squarespace meets that bill perfectly. Personally, I would advise you to actually use a third-party platform for your scheduling needs and for your email marketing platform, as well as to buy a domain somewhere else, simply because if you ever decide to choose a different platform because you no longer want to be on Squarespace, you want to try Showit, or you want to go to WordPress, then it'll be a lot easier to move your domain over to that other platform, and it'll be a lot easier to keep your existing email list and your scheduling appointments and everything, your contacts database, in those specific platforms. You won't have to worry about exporting it out of Squarespace, importing it somewhere else, finding a different platform. It'll just be easier if you decide to move off of Squarespace. Another thing that I wanted to mention about Squarespace is that there are no maintenance, and there is no maintenance to think of. There are no updates to install. There are no technical behind-the-scenes tweaks that you need to do in order to have your website. All of that is taken care of for you by Squarespace itself. On top of that, Squarespace has 24/7 live support, which you can access, or has support, which you can access through live chat and email. So if you ever run into a problem with your website, there is somebody you can contact and get in touch with, which is not often the case with WordPress. I forgot to mention that, because WordPress, as it stands, they do not have a dedicated support area for the self-hosted version. They have support forums, but that is essentially you asking other WordPress users and WordPress developers on how to solve a particular problem. If you have a problem with your website, you will most likely have to get in touch with your hosting company, and then there is a pretty good chance that your hosting company will tell you to contact the WordPress developer or to find the WordPress developer to solve that problem. So there isn't one central location where you can go to get help with your website. Whereas with Squarespace, if you run into an issue, there is that support element that you can go to and find support for your website for whatever problem you're experiencing. Now, Squarespace uses a drag and drop builder, which means that basically you take an element that you want to add to your website, such as text or image, and you simply drag it and drop it on your site where you want it to appear. So that makes it super easy for beginners because there is no coding involved. You don't have to learn to code to use Squarespace, and you can make a good looking website even without any coding knowledge. Squarespace is also mobile responsive by default, so your website will look good on mobile devices. Straight out of the gate, there is nothing separate that you need to adjust or tweak or do to get it to look good on mobile. You can also optimize. Squarespace has SEO settings built in that allow you to optimize your website for search engines. So you can enter an SEO title for your entire website as well as for each individual page and blog post on your website. You can enter a meta description for your website and again, each individual page, product, and blog post on your website. You can add alt images, alt text to images, which is important not only from SEO perspective, but also from an accessibility standpoint, because people who have disabilities, visual impairments, they use screen readers to read the code or to read the website for them. And when you add the alt text, then they can read and describe to the person who has disabilities what is on that picture, so they can visualize it. Coincidentally, the more accessible your website is, the better it is for the search engines as well, because if your website is not accessible, chances are it'll provide a poor user experience, not only for people with disabilities, but also other people. For example, if your text, if there's not enough contrast between your background and your text, most people won't stick around to read if it's hard to read. So from that perspective, accessibility contributes to better user experience of your website, which in turn can increase how much time a user spends on your website, which in turn signals Google that your website is good, which in turn boosts your position on the search engines. So it's all convoluted, well, not convoluted, but rather interconnected. And from that standpoint, it's important to add those alt text to images. So you can do all of that in Squarespace. So who is Squarespace great for? So as I've mentioned before, Squarespace is great for anybody who provides a service. Copywriters, graphic designers, web designers, virtual assistants, coaches, consultants, health coaches, wellness coaches, life coaches, basically anybody who provides a service. It is also good for smaller stores that don't need a lot of complicated features. And if you simply want to sell like a handful of handmade products, or if you simply want to sell a handful of digital products, Squarespace will absolutely allow you to do that. And you can accept payments through both PayPal and Stripe, as long as Stripe is supported in your country. And finally, let's talk about Showit, which is unique in how it actually works. So Showit basically is similar to, the interface is very similar to Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the Adobe programs, basically. So if you used one of those programs and experienced with it, then the Showit interface will be super familiar to you. It is essentially a drag and drop builder that doesn't quite work like Squarespace. Squarespace is built on a grid system. So that means that basically if you place an element onto your Squarespace page, Squarespace will align it to a grid. It is a 12 grid system. And basically this allows you to have a visually pleasing layout. So for example, if you want to create 3 columns, Squarespace will make sure that those 3 columns are equal sized. If you want to create 2 columns, it will make sure that those 2 columns are the same size. So essentially, it's that's what the purpose of the grid layout is, to simply make a visually pleasing layout and make sure that all elements on the page are nicely laid out and positioned on the page. Showit doesn't have that underlying grid system. So essentially, you can place an element wherever you want on a page, and you can overlap another element on it, which you can't really, you can't achieve it in Squarespace, and it'll be even more possible with this new fluid engine layout builder that they're coming out, that will be released here soon for everybody on Squarespace. But on Showit, you can easily create those overlapped collage layer-like elements on your website. So essentially, if you want something that gives you complete freedom over how you design your website pages, then Showit will definitely be right up your alley. So while there is that drag and drop builder that Showit provides, what's interesting about Showit is that if you want to blog on your website, then that blog is powered by WordPress. So essentially your Showit website connects with a WordPress website, and you create the layout for your blog on Showit, but you write all the blog posts and all the other content for your blog in WordPress. So essentially you have two logins for your Showit website. One that logs you in into Showit itself, that allows you to take care of all your website settings and whatnot. And the other one for your WordPress website, where you log in to write blog posts. Now, I know it sounds a little convoluted and confusing, but essentially it is simple once you get the hang of it and once you get used to it. So similarly to WordPress, Showit does not have a lot of features out of the box. So you can create pages, you can optimize your website for SEO, you can most definitely change colors and fonts and upload images and upload your logo and all of that good stuff. You can optimize your images for SEO, or your entire website for SEO. I think I've mentioned that already, but it's worth repeating. However, if you want to blog, as I've mentioned, you're going to need a WordPress website. Similarly, if you want to sell with Showit, they don't have native e-commerce options. So you're either going to get that through WordPress by installing WooCommerce on your website, or you're going to need to integrate Shopify buy buttons onto your website. Another thing that I want to mention about Showit is that you are going to have to design the mobile version of your website and the desktop version of your website separately. So once you design your desktop version, you will need to adjust it for mobile devices and move elements around and shuffle them around to make sure that it looks visually pleasing on mobile devices. And similarly to Squarespace, there are no maintenance and updates to take care of on the Showit side. But if you're using WordPress for blogging and whatnot, you will need to take care of those updates, and you will need to back up your website similarly to how WordPress functions. Who is Showit for? Again, Showit works well for service-based providers who don't really have the need to have a lot of complicated features on their website, who need a website that allows them to showcase their services and for people to get in touch with them pretty easily. Can you use Showit to create a more complex website? You can, but again, you will probably need the help of a designer or a developer to do so, just to make sure that everything is correct in implementing the features that you want and that you need. So, to recap, which platform should you choose? Well, that depends on what you want to do with your website, and that depends on what features you need with your website. And I go through all of this in my website prep system guide, which essentially allows you to plot out all the features that you're going to need and your customer journey and whatever the goals that you have for your website, which you can get. I will leave a link for that down in the description below if you're if you're building your website and are interested in just basically having something that lets you plot that out. But essentially, my recommendation is this. If you want something that is truly versatile and you aren't quite sure where your website is going to go, but you want to leave yourself an opportunity to grow and develop into whatever you want, then WordPress is your best bet. If you want something simple and straightforward, definitely go with Squarespace. And if you want the ultimate creative freedom to design the website of your dreams and you want to do it yourself, then Showit will be right up your alley. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and I would absolutely love it if you leave me a comment down below and tell me which platform you decided to go for, or which platform you're already using for your website and what is your favorite feature of that platform. That's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.